power. It's everywhere, shaping our world in ways we often don't even realize. But what if I told you that the most influential forms of power aren't always the ones we see on the surface?
Oh, that's an intriguing way to start our discussion. Are you suggesting there's more to power than meets the eye?
Absolutely. When we think of power, we often picture CEOs, politicians, or wealthy individuals. But the reality is far more nuanced and frankly fascinating. Power comes in many forms, and understanding these different sources can be a game changer in both our personal and professional lives.
Hmm, I'm curious to hear more. What exactly do you mean by different forms of power?
Well, let's break it down. We're going to explore Bernard Mayer's framework of 10 sources of mediation power. It's a comprehensive look at where power originates in various situations, and it might surprise you.
10 sources? That sounds like a lot to keep track of. Can you give us an overview?
Sure thing. We've got formal authority, which is what most people think of first, the power that comes with a position or title. Then there's expert or information power, which is based on knowledge or skills. Associational power is about who you know and who respects you.
Oh, I can see how those would be important in a business context. What are some of the others?
Well, we've got resource power, which is about controlling valuable assets. Procedural power comes from understanding and manipulating processes. Sanction power is the ability to punish or reward. Then there's nuisance power, which is interesting. It's the power to be disruptive.
Nuisance power? That's not something I would have thought of as a form of power. How does that work?
It's fascinating, actually. Think about it. Sometimes the person who can cause the most trouble has a surprising amount of influence. It's not always positive, but it's undeniably powerful. Then we have habitual power, which comes from established patterns of behavior.
And the last two?
The final two are moral power, which stems from ethical standing or integrity, and personal power, which is about individual charisma and persuasiveness. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. These forms of power aren't not static, they shift and interact depending on the situation.
That's a lot to take in. Can you give us an example of how these power dynamics might play out in a real world scenario?
Absolutely. Let's consider a tech startup. The CEO might have formal authority, but in a crucial meeting about a new product feature, the lead developer's expert power could be more influential. Meanwhile, the marketing manager's associational power, their connections in the industry, might be key to the product's success.
I see what you mean about power being dynamic. It's not just about who has the highest title, is it?
Exactly. And here's a statistic that might surprise you. According to a study by the Center for Creative Leadership, 38% of new C suite executives fail within the first 18 months. Often, this is because they rely too heavily on formal authority and neglect other forms of power.
Wow, that's a high failure rate. So, understanding these different power dynamics could be crucial for leadership success.
Absolutely. It's not just about having power, but knowing how to use it effectively. For instance, a leader who balances their formal authority with strong moral power, consistently acting with integrity, is likely to have more influence and respect from their team.
This reminds me of a quote I once heard: the most powerful person in the room is often not the loudest. It seems like that fits well with what we're discussing.
That's a great quote, and it perfectly encapsulates what we're talking about. Power isn't always obvious or loud. Sometimes it's the quiet expert in the corner or the person who knows how to navigate complex systems who holds the most influence.
So, how can people recognize and harness their own power, especially if it's not the traditional kind?
Well, it starts with self awareness. We should all do a personal power audit from time to time. Think about your strengths, your knowledge areas, your relationships. Where do you have expertise that others value? Who respects your opinion? What processes do you understand better than others?
That's an interesting exercise. I imagine it could be quite eye opening for some people.
Absolutely. And here's another surprising fact. A study by Vital Smarts found that 95% of employees have trouble voicing their concerns at work. This suggests that many people aren't recognizing or using their power effectively.
That's a staggering number. What do you think contributes to this reluctance?
Well, there are several factors. Often it's a lack of awareness of their own power. Sometimes it's fear of repercussions, but frequently it's simply not knowing how to leverage the power they have effectively.
So, understanding these different types of power could potentially help people find their voice and make a bigger impact.
Exactly. And it's not just about personal gain. Understanding power dynamics can help create more balanced, effective organizations. For instance, a leader who recognizes and values different forms of power is more likely to create an inclusive environment where diverse perspectives are heard.
That makes a lot of sense. But I can't help wondering, with all these different types of power at play, doesn't it sometimes lead to conflict?
Uh, Absolutely. Power imbalances are often at the root of many conflicts, both personal and professional. When there's a significant disparity in power between individuals or groups, it can lead to resentment, miscommunication, and tension.
How can we address these imbalances? It seems like a crucial skill for maintaining healthy relationships and organizations.
You're right. It is crucial. Addressing power imbalances often involves recognizing and validating different types of power, not just the obvious ones. It's about creating environments where diverse forms of power are acknowledged and respected.
This is all fascinating, but I'm curious, how can we use this understanding of power for positive change?
That's a great question. Using power for positive change often involves recognizing opportunities where your particular type of power can make a difference. For example, if you have strong associational power, you might use your network to raise awareness for important causes.
And I suppose someone with expert power might use their knowledge to educate others or solve community problems.
Exactly. It's about aligning your power with your values and using it in service of something greater than yourself. This could be as simple as using your procedural power to streamline processes at work, making everyone's job easier, or as complex as using your moral power to advocate for systemic changes in society.
It's empowering to think about power in this way, not as something to hoard, but as a tool for positive impact.
Absolutely. And that's a great note to end on. As we wrap up this discussion, I encourage our listeners to start paying attention to the power dynamics around them. You might be surprised at what you notice.
And perhaps more importantly, you might start recognizing your own power in situations where you previously felt powerless.
Exactly. Understanding power dynamics isn't just about recognizing others' power, it's about claiming your own and using it wisely. Remember, power comes in many forms, and each of us has the potential to influence our world in meaningful ways.
This has been such an enlightening discussion. I feel like we've only scratched the surface of this complex topic.
Indeed, we have. Power dynamics are at play in every interaction, every decision, every relationship. The more we understand them, the better equipped we are to navigate our world effectively and ethically. And that understanding starts with recognizing the diverse sources of power all around us and within us.